Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to take you through an extraordinary journey of a young girl who defied all odds to become a chess prodigy. This is the story of the Queen's Gambit. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Our story begins with a 9-year-old girl named Beth Harmon. Imagine this. A little girl sitting in the middle of a large room, surrounded by 10 high school students, each ready to challenge her in a game of chess. But Beth isn't fazed. She plays all 10 games simultaneously, and to everyone's astonishment, she wins every single one in under half an hour. Victorious, she returns to the orphanage with her prize, a box of chocolates. But behind her victory lies a story filled with sorrow and resilience. You see, Beth was born with an extraordinary mind, inherited from her mother, who was a brilliant mathematics PhD. However, Beth's life wasn't filled with warmth and love. 3 months earlier, her mother, overwhelmed by her own struggles, decided to end both their lives. She drove their car straight into a truck. The crash was devastating. The car was crushed beyond recognition, and Beth's mother died instantly. But miraculously, Beth survived without a scratch. At just 9 years old, Beth didn't fully understand what had happened. She was taken to an orphanage, where her life would begin anew, without the mother she loved so dearly. At the orphanage, Beth faced the harsh reality of starting over. The first thing she had to do was part with her mother's belongings. The headmistress, a stern woman, insisted that Beth's old clothes, embroidered by her mother, be burned. Beth hesitated, feeling a deep sense of loss, but she didn't protest. Soon after, she was introduced to a daily routine that included taking vitamins, pills that the other children called the green ones. A more experienced orphan advised Beth to save the green pill for the night, but Beth, not knowing any better, swallowed it immediately. The effect was immediate dizziness and disorientation. By dinner time, she could barely keep her head up, much to the amusement of the older girls who had warned her. That night, as the effects of the pill wore off, Beth found herself unable to sleep. Lying in bed, her mind drifted back to her early childhood. She remembered how her mother would burn her doctoral thesis along with old clothes, and how she'd always refused to let Beth's father visit. Her mother was a troubled woman, often unpredictable, and Beth had lived in fear of her mood swings. Yet, despite everything, Beth loved her mother deeply. The next day, Beth's sharp mind caught the attention of her math teacher. She solved problems with ease, often skipping the steps most students needed to write out. Impressed but confused, the teacher sent Beth to the laundry room to clean the chalkboard erasers. There, Beth noticed the janitor playing chess alone. She was instantly captivated by the movement of the pieces on the board. However, when the janitor noticed her watching, he glared at her with such intensity that she ran back to class, too frightened to stay. That night, Beth did as she was advised. She saved the green pill until bedtime. As she lay in bed, the pill's effects began to take hold, and she started to see the ceiling transform into a giant chessboard. She was mesmerized by the imaginary game unfolding before her eyes. The next day, during music class, Beth couldn't resist any longer. She pretended to need the bathroom and sneaked off to find the janitor, determined to learn how to play chess. But when she asked him to teach her, he coldly refused, saying, "I don't play with strangers." Disappointed but undeterred, Beth spent another night staring at the ceiling, imagining the pieces moving across the board, replaying every detail she had seen. Over the next few days, Beth continued to find excuses to visit the janitor. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer. She boldly told him, "I'm not a stranger. I live here, and I already know how some of the pieces move." The janitor was shocked. How could this little girl remember so much just from watching? Realizing her determination, he agreed to play with her. Their first game was over almost as soon as it began. The janitor checkmated her in just 4 moves. "It's called the scholar's mate," he explained with a smirk. Beth was frustrated, but more than that, she was curious. She begged the janitor to teach her more, but he refused, leaving her to figure it out on her own. That night, driven by her desire to understand the game, Beth took 5 green pills. She sat up in bed, her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as she mentally replayed the scholar's mate over and over again. The next day, she returned to the janitor, determined to win. She made her first move with confidence, but the janitor was ready. He countered her move easily, forcing her to concede. He tried to teach her that conceding is part of the game, but Beth didn't understand. In a fit of frustration, she cursed at him, a word she had picked up from one of the older girls.
"You cocksucker."
The janitor, taken aback by her outburst, stopped playing with her for several days. Beth feared she had driven him away for good. But the janitor returned, and their games resumed, growing longer and more complex. Beth's rapid improvement astonished him. This girl wasn't just a quick learner. She was a prodigy, a natural chess player. He began teaching her more advanced strategies, from the Sicilian defense to the French defense. Beth absorbed everything like a sponge, her hunger for knowledge insatiable. The janitor even introduced her to chess openings, one of which was the Queen's Gambit. From that day on, Beth was no longer just a curious child. She was a serious chess player, destined for greatness. A few days later, the janitor gave Beth a book titled Modern Chess Openings. It was a treasure trove of information, and Beth devoured it, studying every line and variation. The janitor finally admitted what he had known all along. "To tell you the truth, child, you're astounding." Beth continued to practice and improve, and one day, she found herself playing against the high school chess club coach, who was also a teacher. After just a few moves, Beth confidently declared, "Checkmate in 3. The coach was stunned. How could a girl so young be so skilled? When he asked her where she practiced, she replied, "In my head on the ceiling." Soon, Beth's matches with the janitor turned into 2-on-1 games, with Beth effortlessly defeating 2 adults at once. Her talent was undeniable. The coach was so impressed that he asked the orphanage director for permission to take Beth to the high school chess club on Thursdays, where she would face multiple opponents at once. But when the director found out about Beth's chess games with the janitor, she was inexplicably furious. She ordered Beth to stop playing, adding to Beth's growing frustration. As if that wasn't enough, the orphanage had also stopped distributing the green pills. New regulations had banned giving tranquilizers to children. Beth's supply was running low, and without the pills, she became anxious and irritable, suffering from withdrawal symptoms. The day the high school coach came to pick up Beth for her first big tournament, she was in terrible shape. But just before she left, one of the older girls slipped her 2 green pills, wishing her luck. At the high school, Beth was greeted by a roomful of teenage boys, all eager to prove themselves against the little girl. But Beth wasn't intimidated. She faced them one by one, and within minutes, they realized that they were no match for her. The best among them fell in just 21 moves. Afterward, Beth told the janitor, "What surprised me the most was how bad they were." She returned to the orphanage with a box of chocolates, her prize for winning the tournament. But what she really wanted was more of the green pills. She eyed the jar behind the glass, full of pills just out of reach. Deterred, she devised a plan. While everyone else was watching a movie, she sneaked into the basement, stole a screwdriver, and broke into the medicine cabinet. She devoured the pills greedily, stuffing her pockets with as many as she could. She had taken too many, and before she could escape, she collapsed unconscious. When she awoke, the director was furious. As punishment, she was forbidden from playing chess, and not even the janitor could help her. For the next few years, Beth was denied the one thing she loved most: chess. Years passed, and Beth grew into a young woman. At 15, a couple expressed interest in adopting her. On the night before she left, Beth apologized to the older girl who had once helped her, knowing that she was being left behind because of her race. On the day of her departure, the janitor came to see her off. Beth waved goodbye, but as she turned away, she couldn't hide the tears in her eyes. Beth's new home was with a middle-class Catholic family. The father was quiet and reserved, while the mother was warm and welcoming, showing Beth to her new room. For the first time, Beth had a room of her own. She enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep, but was soon woken by the sound of her foster parents arguing. The father was leaving on a business trip for 2 weeks, and no matter how much the mother pleaded, he refused to stay. Beth's first day at her new school was less than ideal. Her classmates teased her for her outdated clothes, but Beth didn't care. Her mind was only on chess. When she asked her foster mother for a chess set, she was told to save up and buy one herself. One day, Beth stumbled upon an advertisement for a chess tournament. The entry fee was only $5, but Beth didn't have the money. Desperate, she wrote to the janitor, asking for a loan. To her relief, he quickly sent the money. Beth entered the tournament alone, and when the staff realized it was her first competition, they tried to dissuade her, warning that she would be torn apart by the experienced players. But Beth wasn't deterred. Her first opponent was a kind girl who quickly fell to Beth's superior skills. The tournament staff were astonished. How could this little girl win so quickly? Her next opponent was arrogant, but it didn't take long for him to realize he was outmatched. By the end of the first day, Beth had won 4 matches, yet the staff still dismissed her success as beginner's luck. On Saturday morning, Her opponent was a strikingly handsome man, and Beth felt a flutter of excitement. Unlike the others, he didn't underestimate her, and Beth, eager to spend more time with him, deliberately prolonged the game. Onlookers could tell that the young girl was toying with her opponent, but eventually, the man smiled and conceded. Just after the match, Beth rushed to the bathroom and discovered that she had gotten her first period. Would she still finish the tournament? How would she fare? Her opponent, with no respect for women in chess, treated the game as a waste of time, preferring to groom his hair between moves. Beth, angered by his disrespect, decided to crush him. By the semifinals, 15-year-old Beth was ready to prove herself. Her opponent dismissed her as insignificant, but she was about to show him just how wrong he was. Beth discovered that the odds were stacked against her. Her opponent was the favorite to win, but Beth's confidence never wavered. As the game began, she noticed that he was playing with a sense of arrogance, assuming he would easily defeat her. But Beth's focus was unwavering. She made her moves with precision, countering each of his plays with calculated strategy. The tension in the room grew as Beth slowly but surely turned the game in her favor. Her opponent, realizing he was in trouble, began to panic. He couldn't believe that this young girl was outmaneuvering him at every turn. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Beth delivered the final blow. Her opponent, stunned, had no choice but to resign. Beth had done it. She had defeated the tournament favorite. The room erupted in applause, and Beth, for the first time, felt the thrill of victory. She was no longer just a girl who played chess. She was a champion. The journey didn't end there. Beth continued to rise through the ranks, facing stronger and more experienced opponents. Her victories earned her recognition, but they also brought new challenges. She faced scrutiny from the media, who were more interested in her troubled past than her achievements. They wanted to paint her as a damaged prodigy, a girl whose brilliance was born out of trauma. But Beth was determined to prove them wrong. With each tournament, Beth's reputation grew. She became known as the girl who could beat anyone, and soon, she was invited to compete in the Open. It was a chance to prove herself on the national stage, to show the world that she was more than just a curiosity. But as the pressure mounted, so did Beth's doubts. She was haunted by memories of her mother, who had always seemed on the brink of losing control. Beth feared that she, too, might be destined for a life of chaos and instability. But she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the game she loved. Open was a turning point in Beth's life. It was there that she met her most formidable opponent yet, a man who had been playing chess since before she was born. He was the reigning national champion, and everyone expected him to win. But Beth was determined to defy the odds once again. The match was intense, with both players pushing each other to their limits. For the first time, Beth found herself struggling to keep up. Her opponent was relentless, attacking her from all sides. But Beth didn't back down. She fought with everything she had, drawing on every ounce of strength and skill she possessed. In the end, it was Beth who emerged victorious. She had defeated the national champion and claimed the title for herself. It was a moment of triumph, a validation of everything she had worked so hard to achieve. But the victory came at a cost. The pressure, the expectations, the relentless pursuit of perfection. It was all taking a toll on Beth. She began to lose herself in the world of chess, becoming more and more isolated from the people around her. Her relationships with her friends, her foster mother, and even her opponents began to suffer. Beth's descent into darkness reached its peak when she was invited to compete in an international tournament in Paris. It was her chance to prove herself on the global stage, to show the world that she was the best. But the night before the tournament, Beth made a fatal mistake. She let herself get swept up in the allure of the city, spending the night drinking and partying instead of preparing for the match. The next day, she was a wreck. She could barely focus, her mind clouded by the after-effects of the night before. Her opponent, a Russian grandmaster named Borgov, was relentless. He picked apart her every move, exposing her weaknesses for all to see. Beth was defeated, and the loss was devastating. Turning home, Beth found herself at a crossroads. She had lost everything she had worked so hard to achieve. Her foster mother had passed away, leaving her alone once again. The house that had once been her sanctuary was now just a reminder of her failures. But Beth wasn't ready to give up. She knew that if she wanted to succeed, she would have to confront her demons head-on. She sought help from an old friend, a former chess rival who had once been her fiercest competitor. Together, they trained for the biggest challenge of her life, the World Chess Championship in Moscow. Beth arrived in Moscow determined to win. She knew that the odds were against her, but she also knew that she had the talent, the drive, and the determination to succeed. The tournament was grueling, with each match pushing her to her limits. But Beth didn't back down. She fought with everything she had, taking on the best players in the world and emerging victorious. The final match was against Borgov, the man who had defeated her in Paris. This time, Beth was ready. She had learned from her mistakes, and she wasn't going to let anything stand in her way. The match was intense, with both players pushing each other to their limits. But in the end, it was Beth who emerged victorious. She had finally achieved her dream. She was the world chess champion. As she walked through the streets of Moscow, surrounded by cheering fans, Beth realized that she had finally found her place in the world. She was no longer the scared little girl who had lost her mother. She was a champion, a force to be reckoned with, and she knew that nothing could ever take that away from her. And so, Beth Harmon's journey came to an end, but her story will live on, a testament to the power of determination, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of a true champion.